My identical twin sister has been impersonating me to sleep with my boyfriend. I didn't know until he mentioned a tattoo on my inner thigh that I definitely do not have. It was a Tuesday. A mundane, rainy, nothing special Tuesday that smelled like leftover Thai food and the lavender fabric softener Kaylin insists on buying. I was exhausted. My shift at the trauma center had run 3 hours over because of a multi-car pileup on I-95, and all I wanted to do was melt into the couch and let my brain turn to static while watching reality TV. Kaylin was already there, his legs sprawled out, nursing a craft beer. When I sat down, he immediately pulled my legs into his lap. This was our ritual. He would massage the tension out of my calves while we debriefed our days. I closed my eyes, letting the hum of the TV and the warmth of his hands ground me. That's when his thumb drifted higher. He wasn't being sexual, just affectionate, tracing idle patterns on the inside of my thigh, just above the knee. "It's healing really nicely, Elle," he murmured, his eyes still glued to the screen where a chef was yelling about risotto. "No scabbing at all. You were right, that artist has a light hand." I frowned, keeping my eyes closed. "Huh? What's healing?" "The ink," he said, tapping the spot gently. "The lotus. It looks barely red today." My eyes snapped open. The room suddenly felt very cold, despite the heating vent rattling in the corner. I pulled my leg back, maybe a little too sharply. "What are you talking about, Kaylin?" He looked at me, confused by my tone. "The tattoo? The one you showed me on Sunday night? The little black lotus flower?" He gestured to my inner thigh. "Why are you looking at me like I just spoke Aramaic?" I stared at him. I stared at his familiar hazel eyes, the slight stubble on his jaw, the man I had loved for 3 years, and I felt the floor drop out from under me. "Kaylin," I said, my voice shaking despite my best efforts to keep it clinical, "I don't have a tattoo." He laughed, a short, dismissive sound. "Okay, very funny. I know you said you wanted to keep it a secret from your parents, but it's just me here." "I'm serious," I said, standing up. My heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. "I do not have a tattoo. I have never had a tattoo. I haven't been to a parlor, I haven't seen an artist, and I certainly didn't show you anything on Sunday night." Kaylin's smile faded. He set his beer down on the coaster with a heavy clink. "Elara, stop. You literally straddled me in this living room 2 nights ago, hiked up your skirt, and showed me the fresh ink. You said it was a symbol of, what was it? Rebirth. We spent the rest of the night celebrating that rebirth, if you recall." I felt bile rise in my throat. Sunday night. I was at work on Sunday night. I pulled a double. I didn't get home until 4 a.m. You were asleep. "No." Kaylin stood up now, matching my agitation. "You came home at 9 p.m. You said the census supervisor let you go early because the census was low. You were wearing that red wrap dress, the one you wore on our anniversary. You were different, lighter, energetic." He ran a hand through his hair, looking disturbed. "Are you gaslighting me right now? Is this some kind of sick TikTok trend?" I didn't answer him. I turned on my heel and sprinted to the bathroom. I stripped off my scrub pants and panties, twisting my body to look in the full-length mirror. My skin was pale, smooth, and completely unmarked. I checked the other leg. Nothing. Just a small bruise from bumping into a gurney. No lotus, no ink, no redness. I stared at my reflection, and for a second, I didn't see myself. I saw a ghost that looked exactly like me, sounded like me, but acted in ways I never would. I unlocked the door and walked back out. Kaylin was standing in the hallway, looking angry now. "Look, Kaylin," I said, dropping my pants to my knees right there in the hall. It wasn't seductive, it was desperate. "Look, Kaylin, look at my skin." He looked. He stared for a long time. When he looked back up at my face, the anger was gone, replaced with a pure, unadulterated fear that chilled me to the bone. It was there," he stammered, backing away from me. "I touched it. I felt the raised skin. It was right there." "I believe you," I said, pulling my pants up. My voice sounded hollow, like it was coming from inside a tunnel. "I believe you saw it, but that wasn't me." To understand the gravity of that sentence, "that wasn't me," you have to understand Serafina. Serafina is my identical twin sister, but calling us identical is a biological technicality that feels like a cosmic joke. We shared a womb, we share a face, and we share a DNA sequence. But that is where the similarities end. If I am the solid earth, Serafina is the wildfire that scorches it. Growing up, it was the usual twin tropes, but twisted. She didn't just borrow my clothes, she destroyed them and put them back in my closet. She didn't just pretend to be me to skip class, she pretended to be me to break up with my high school boyfriend because she was bored. There was an incident in our senior year of high school that I've spent a decade trying to scrub from my memory. I was the valedictorian candidate, the good girl, the one with the spotless record. Serafina was on the verge of expulsion for smoking weed in the girls' bathroom. One afternoon, while I was homesick with the flu, Serafina walked into the principal's office dressed as me. She didn't just prank him, she propositioned him. It took 3 weeks, a lawyer, and security footage proving I was at a doctor's appointment to clear my name. But the rumors never really went away. People looked at me differently. They looked for the hidden slut, the hidden crazy. Serafina thought it was hilarious. She called it liberating me from my repression. We've been low contact for years. I went into nursing, craving order, science, and indisputable facts. Serafina drifted through art schools, bartending gigs, and a series of chaotic relationships with men who rode motorcycles and didn't believe in 401ks. But 6 months ago, she changed. Or so I thought. She got engaged to Julian, a man who is the antithesis of her usual type. Julian is old money, conservative, polite, and boring. He stabilized her. She started dressing modestly, stopped the drugs, and actually began showing up to family events on time. She apologized to me, weeping, saying she wanted to be a sister I could be proud of. She said she was turning over a new leaf. I wanted to believe it. God, I wanted a sister. So I let her back in. I gave her a key to my apartment for emergencies. I let her come over for wine. I let her see the life I had built with Kalen. Kalen. He was still standing in the hallway, looking like he was about to vomit. If it wasn't you, he started, his voice cracking, then who? Alara, please tell me you have a dissociative disorder. Please tell me you're crazy, because the alternative is that I cheated on you with your sister. She has a key, I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. She has a key, Kalen. I grabbed my phone and immediately opened the app for our smart home system. I needed proof. I needed to see her face walking through that door on Sunday. Sunday, I muttered, scrolling back. You said Sunday night. I found the date, Sunday, October 15th. I scrolled to 8 p.m., system offline. The log was blank. From 7:45 to 6 a.m. the next morning, the Wi-Fi had been manually disconnected. The cameras were dead. The smart lock logs were unreachable. She turned off the router, I said, looking up at him. She came in, unplugged the internet so the cameras wouldn't catch her, and then she put on your red dress, Kalen said, his face pale gray. She knew where it was. She knew how you did your hair. She smelled like you. Did she? I asked, sharply. Did she really smell like me, or did you just not pay attention? Kalen flinched. She smelled like spicy, like sandalwood and something heavy. I thought maybe you bought a new perfume. I even found the receipt for it in my jacket pocket later, so I assumed you bought it while we were out. I hate sandalwood. I wear Jo Malone Peony, exclusively, for 5 years, Kalen. He rushed to the coat rack and dug into his leather jacket. He pulled out a crumpled piece of paper and handed it to me. It was a receipt from a boutique downtown. Le Labo Santal 33, paid for in cash, dated last Saturday. I didn't buy this, I said, crumbling the paper in my fist. Serafina bathes in this stuff. It's her signature scent. I paced the living room, my mind racing. This wasn't a prank. The principal's office was a prank. This was invasive. This was a violation of the highest order. She had impersonated me, sexually deceived my boyfriend, and was walking around with a tattoo she claimed was mine to solidify the illusion. Why? Why now? She was engaged to Julian. She had the stability she always mocked me for wanting. Why blow it up to sleep with Kalen, a mid-level architect who makes decent money, but nothing compared to Julian? I feel sick, Kalen said, sinking onto the sofa. I slept with her. I held her. We talked, Ilara. We talked about us, about our future. She convinced me to open that joint savings account we've been discussing. I stopped pacing. What? Kalen looked up, eyes wide. The vacation fund. She said we should stop stalling and put the money in. I transferred 10 grand into the new account on Monday morning. She said she'd handle the paperwork to add your name to it. I didn't sign anything, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. Kalen, if she set up the account and you transferred money into it, it's under your name, he insisted. She had your ID. She must have taken it from your wallet when, God, I don't know. If she used my ID to open it, legally, it might be in my name, I said, thinking fast. But if she has the access codes... I ran to my purse and dumped it out on the table. My wallet was there. My driver's license was in its slot. But as I slid it out, I noticed the plastic edge was slightly sticky, like it had been pulled out and jammed back in by someone with sweaty hands, or maybe someone in a rush. She didn't just want sex, I realized, noticing the scope of this. Serafina doesn't do things just for pleasure. She does them for power. She wants my life. She wants to be me. We have to call the police, Kalen said, reaching for his phone. This is rape by deception. This is fraud. No, I lunged and grabbed his wrist. What do you mean no? She violated both of us. You don't know Serafina, I hissed. The police won't do anything. She's my identical twin. She'll say it was consensual, that you knew it was her, that it was a threesome fantasy gone wrong. She'll twist it. She'll ruin your reputation and mine. Remember high school? She almost got a man fired and arrested just for fun. If we bring the cops in now without undeniable proof, she will burn our lives to the ground. So what do we do? Kalen asked, looking helpless. Just let her get away with it? No, I said, a cold resolve settling over me. The shock was fading, replaced by a sharp, icy rage. I was done being the victim. I was done being the good twin who cleaned up the messes. I was done being the good twin who cleaned up the messes. I'm not letting her get away with it. We catch her. We bury her. How? I think she thinks she tricked you, I said. She thinks she's smarter than everyone. She thinks I'm the oblivious workaholic nurse who doesn't notice when her own boyfriend sleeps with someone else. She's going to come back, Caitlin. She has a key. She thinks she has access to your money, and she thinks she has you wrapped around her finger. I walked over to the window and looked out at the rainy street. I could almost see her out there, lurking in the shadows of my life, laughing at how easy it was to slip into my skin. I'm going to dye my hair, I said suddenly. What? Caitlin blinked. She's copying me, I explained, turning back to him. She's wearing wigs, or she dyed her hair to match my chestnut brown. She's studying my mannerisms. She's relying on the fact that I am constant. I am the constant variable. I walked into the kitchen and grabbed the scissors from the drawer. I'm going to change the variable. I looked at Caitlin. You're going to act normal. You're going to text her, text me, and tell her you miss her. Tell her you want to see that tattoo again. You're going to invite her over for Friday night. I can't, he whispered. I can't look at her. You have to, I said firmly, because on Friday night, I'm going to be hiding in the closet, and when she walks in here pretending to be me, I'm going to introduce her to the real Ilara. I looked at the scissors in my hand, the metal gleaming under the kitchen lights. But first, I said, I need to confirm something. You said she had a tattoo on her inner thigh? A lotus? Yes. I need to confirm something. You said she had a tattoo on her inner thigh? A lotus? Yes. Temporary tattoos leave a residue, I said. If she put it on for you on Sunday, she probably scrubbed it off before she went back to Julian. Or she kept it to keep the game going. I grabbed my coat. I'm going to her apartment, now. You can't go there, Kaylin protested. What if she's there? She's not, I said, checking the Find My Friends location she stupidly hadn't turned off since her redemption tour began. She's at a wedding tasting with Julian. Her apartment is empty. I drove to her place in a daze. It was a nice apartment, paid for by Julian, of course. I used the spare key she gave me, the symbol of our renewed trust. The place was clean, too clean. It looked like a stage set. I went straight to the bathroom. I dug through the trash can under the sink, nothing with cotton rounds and floss. I checked the recycling, nothing. I felt a moment of panic. Maybe I was crazy. Maybe Kaylin was crazy. Then I saw it, tucked between the vanity in the wall, like it had fallen and been forgotten. A small, clear plastic square, the backing of a high-quality temporary tattoo transfer. I picked it up with a tissue. I could see the faint outline of the ink that had been on it, a lotus flower. I wasn't crazy. I stood in her bathroom, surrounded by her expensive creams and the lingering scent of Santal 33, and I felt a darkness unfurl in my chest that terrified me. It was the same darkness Serafina had carried her whole life. She wanted to be me? Fine. I looked at myself in her mirror. I looked exactly like her. If she wanted to play a game of mirrors, she was about to learn that reflections can shatter, and when they do, the jagged edges cut deep. I pocketed the plastic backing and walked out. Step 1 was complete. I knew the truth. Step 2 was the trap. I pulled out my phone and dialed the most expensive salon in the city. I need an appointment, I told the receptionist. Tonight. I don't care what it costs. What are we doing? She asked. I want to kill the brunette, I said, my voice flat. Make me silver. Make me sharp. Make me unrecognizable. I hung up and looked at the text messages on my phone. There was one from Serafina, sent an hour ago. Hey sis, just checking in. Hope the hospital isn't working you too hard. Love you. I typed back. Love you too. See you soon. She had no idea. I got back in my car, the engine roaring to life. The rain was coming down harder now, blurring the city lights into streaks of neon. I thought about Kaylin, broken and confused in our living room. I thought about the money she stole. I thought about the tattoo on her thigh that looked like mine but wasn't. I drove toward the salon. The old Ilara, the one who forgave, the one who turned the other cheek, died the moment Kaylin traced that invisible lotus on my skin. The new Ilara was coming, and she was bringing hell with her. I arrived at the salon, the neon sign buzzing overhead. Lumina Studios. Fitting. As I sat in the chair and the stylist draped the black cape over me, she touched my long chestnut hair. It's beautiful, she said. Virgin hair? It's going to lift perfectly. Cut it off, I said, staring at my own eyes in the mirror. Bob, chin length, razor sharp. The stylist hesitated. Are you sure? This is a lot of hair to lose. I'm not losing it. I'm shedding skin. She began to mix the bleach. The smell of ammonia filled the air, sharp and chemical. It stung my nose, grounding me. While the bleach burned my scalp, I pulled out my phone and opened a browser. I wasn't just going to change my hair. I needed to secure the perimeter. I ordered 3 battery-operated motion sensor spy cameras. No Wi-Fi, local storage only. If Serafina killed the internet again, these would still record. I ordered them with overnight shipping to my neighbor's address, Mrs. Gable, who loved me and hated Serafina ever since Serafina parked her motorcycle on Mrs. Gable's petunias 3 years ago. The stylist rinsed the bleach. My hair was a pale, raw yellow. Now for the toner, she said. We're going for titanium silver? Yes, I said, like a blade. As the toner sat, I closed my eyes. I visualized the plan. Friday, I would tell Kaylin to tell her I was working a 48-hour shift. He would invite her over. She would come, wearing my face, wearing my clothes, and I would be waiting. But there was one loose thread. Julian. Does he know? Is he in on it? Or is he just another victim of Serafina's theater? I decided to text him, just to probe. Hey Julian, it's Alara. Just wondering if you and Sarah are free for dinner next week. Kaylin and I would love to treat you guys. His reply came 3 minutes later. Hi, Lara. That sounds lovely, but Sarah told me you guys were going through a rough patch. She said you were staying at the hospital a lot to avoid home. Is everything okay? I stared at the screen. She was planting seeds. She was setting the narrative. If I disappeared, or if Kaylin and I broke up, she had already explained why. She was isolating me. We're fine, I typed back. Just busy. You know how she worries. Glad to hear it, Julian replied. Sarah is at her yoga class right now, but I'll ask her when she gets back. Yoga class. It was 9:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. Serafina hated yoga. I switched apps to Kaylin's bank account, the one I still had access to. I checked the pending transactions. There was a charge from an hour ago. A bar called the Black Rabbit. 2 drinks. She wasn't at yoga. She wasn't with Jillian. She was out celebrating. I looked up at the mirror. The stylist was blow-drying my hair. It was shocking. The silver shone under the lights, metallic and cold. The cut was severe, exposing my neck, sharpening my jawline. I looked fierce. I looked dangerous. I didn't look like Serafina anymore. Perfect, I whispered. I paid the stylist and walked out into the rain. The water slicked my new hair down, but I didn't care. I felt electric. I drove home, parking a block away just in case she was watching. I crept into my own apartment building, feeling like the intruder. When I walked into the apartment, Kalen gasped. He actually dropped his glass of water. It shattered on the floor, shards exploding everywhere. "Ilara?" he breathed. "Yes," I said, stepping over the broken glass. "You look—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "I look like someone she can't replace." I went to the closet and pulled out the dress, the red wrap dress she had worn on Sunday. I held it up. It smelled faintly of sandalwood. "Friday," I said, turning to Kalen. "We end this on Friday." "I'm terrified," he admitted, his voice trembling. "Good," I said, tossing the dress onto the pile of broken glass. "Use that fear. Make it real. Because when she walks through that door, I need her to believe she's won, right up until the moment she sees me." I touched my own inner thigh, the skin smooth and unmarked. "She wanted a tattoo," I murmured. "I'm going to give her a scar." The next 48 hours were a blur of cold, calculated precision. I moved through my apartment like a crime scene investigator, my new silver hair catching the light in the mirrors, startling me every time I passed one. It was a constant reminder. The soft, forgiving Ilara was gone. The cameras arrived on Wednesday afternoon in a discreet box addressed to Mrs. Gable. I retrieved them while Kalen was at work, needing to ensure the installation was perfect. I placed the first one in the vent above the television, angling it to cover the entire living room. The second went on top of the kitchen cabinet, hidden behind a decorative vase, pointing at the island where we usually handled bills and mail. The third was the hardest to place. I put it in the bedroom, on the bookshelf, wedged between two thick medical textbooks. I felt a wave of nausea as I activated it, the red light blinking once before going dark. I didn't want to see what that camera would capture, but I needed to. When Kalen came home, he looked like a man marching to the gallows. "Do it," I told him, handing him his phone. He swallowed hard, his fingers hovering over the screen. "What if she knows? What if she suspects?" "She doesn't suspect anything because she thinks I'm an idiot," I said, leaning against the counter, my arms crossed. "She thinks I'm the safe, boring sister who works too much. Use that." He typed out the message we had rehearsed. Elle picked up another 48-hour shift. Trauma unit is chaos. House is empty and I'm losing my mind. Come over? We waited. The 3 minutes it took for her to reply felt like 3 years. On my way to a charity gala with Julian, but I can slip away around 8. Leave the door unlocked? Smiley face? I read the text over his shoulder and felt a dark satisfaction. She's so arrogant. She's bringing Julian into her alibi. "What do I do until Friday?" Kalen asked, his voice thin. "You act normal," I said, "and you do not touch me." Friday arrived with a heavy gray sky. I packed a small bag, my laptop, a change of clothes, and a bottle of water. I kissed Kalen on the cheek, a cold, perfunctory gesture that made him flinch. "See you in 2 days," I said loudly for the benefit of anyone listening in the hallway. I didn't go to the hospital. I drove my car to the employee parking lot, left it there, and took a cab back to my neighborhood. I checked into the Highland Hotel, a budget-friendly spot directly across the street from our apartment building. I asked for a room facing the street. Room 304. It smelled of stale cigarette smoke and lemon pledge. I set up my command center on the wobbly desk, my laptop connected to the local storage feed of the cameras via a secure peer-to-peer app I configured. I sat there in the dark, watching the empty digital feed of my own living room. It was 6 p.m. At 7:45 p.m., the feed flickered. The front door of my apartment opened. My breath hitched. Even though I knew it was coming, seeing it was a visceral shock. Serafina walked in. But it wasn't the Serafina I knew. She was wearing a high-quality wig, chestnut brown, styled exactly in my soft waves. She was wearing my clothes. Not just any clothes, but my favorite oversized oatmeal cardigan and leggings. She was wearing my glasses. I don't even wear prescription glasses anymore. I got LASIK 2 years ago, but I kept the frames for reading. She had dug them out of a drawer. She dropped her keys in the bowl, my bowl, with a familiar clatter. She sighed, rubbing her neck, mimicking the exact gesture I do when I come home from a long shift. "It's uncanny," I whispered to the empty hotel room. Kalen walked into the frame from the kitchen. He looked stiff. "Hey," he said. Serafina smiled. It was my smile. "Hey yourself. Did you miss me?" She walked over to him and wrapped her arms around his neck. I watched on the screen, my fingernails digging into my palms. Kalen hesitated for a fraction of a second, then hugged her back. "I missed this," she purred, pulling back to look at him. "Julian is so stiff. He treats me like a porcelain doll. You treat me like a woman." "Is that why you're here?" Kalen asked. "The script." He was sticking to the script. "Just to get away from Julian?" "I'm here because I belong here," she said, walking over to the fridge and pulling out a bottle of wine. She poured herself a glass without asking. "We have a connection, Kalen. You feel it. The tattoo? That was for you. A symbol of us." "Show me," he said. She laughed, a low, throaty sound that was definitely not mine. She hiked up her leg and placed her foot on the kitchen island. She pulled up the legging. There it was, the lotus. She had reapplied it. "It's beautiful," Kalen lied. "It's permanent," she lied back, "just like I want us to be." I watched them move to the living room. I forced myself not to look away. I needed to see the extent of the betrayal. I needed to see if Kaylin pushed her away. He didn't. He let her kiss him. He let her straddle his lap. And for a moment, looking at the grainy night vision feed, I saw something that broke the last fragile piece of my heart. Kaylin wasn't just acting. He was responding. He was holding her waist with a familiarity that made my stomach turn. He knew it wasn't me. He knew, and yet his body didn't seem to care. I closed the laptop lid. I couldn't watch the physical act. I didn't need to. The audio feed was recording to the hard drive. That was enough evidence. I sat in the silence of room 304 for 20 minutes, staring at the wall, counting the cracks in the plaster. 1, 2, 3. I opened the laptop again. They were back in the living room, disheveled. Serafina was wearing Kaylin's shirt. "So," she said, curling her legs under her, "about the trip. Did you transfer the funds?" "I did. 10,000. It's in the joint account." "Perfect," she said. "I was looking at the itinerary for Bali. I think we should book the flights tonight, while the rates are low." "Tonight?" Kaylin asked. "Ilara usually handles the booking." "I am Ilara," she said playfully, grabbing my iPad from the coffee table. She knew the passcode. Of course she did. It was our birthday. "Come on, give me the banking login. Let's just do it. Surprise me." I don't have the token," Kaylin stammered. "It's on my work phone." "You have the app on your personal phone," she insisted, her voice gaining a hard edge. "Don't be difficult, babe. Just unlock it." She reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. She held it up to his face to unlock it with Face ID. "There," she said, tapping away. "Transferred to our savings. And done. Access granted to my device, too." My jaw dropped. She wasn't just planning a vacation. She was linking the account to her own device, bypassing the two-factor authentication by using his trust. She was securing the bag. "Bali is going to be amazing," she sighed, tossing the phone back to him. "I have to go," I said aloud. I stood up, grabbed my coat, and checked my reflection in the hotel mirror. The silver bob was sharp, alien, and perfect. I applied a coat of dark red lipstick, blood red. Classic Ilara wore nude gloss. This was war paint. I left the hotel and crossed the street. The rain had started again, a light drizzle that made the pavement slick. I walked up the steps to my building, my heart pounding a rhythm of pure adrenaline. I took the elevator to the 4th floor. I stood outside my own door. I could hear the faint sound of the TV inside. I didn't knock. I didn't announce myself. I unlocked the door and pushed it open. The scene froze. Kaylin was on the couch, a glass of whiskey in his hand. Serafina was next to him, her head on his shoulder, scrolling through my iPad. When the door opened, Serafina jumped up, her face arranging itself into a mask of innocent surprise. She turned to face me, expecting, I assume, a delivery driver or a neighbor. "Honey, she started, using my voice. Then she saw me. She saw the silver hair, she saw the dark lipstick, she saw the tailored black trench coat instead of scrubs. Her words died in her throat. Her eyes went wide, darting from my face to my hair, trying to compute the data. It was like watching a computer glitch. She was dressed as me, the old me, and I was standing there looking like a stranger. "Ilara?" Kaylin stood up, his face pale. This was his cue, but he looked like he was about to faint. "Hi," I said, my voice cool and steady. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me with a definitive click. Serafina blinked rapidly. She touched her own wig, then dropped her hand quickly. "Ilara, what did you do to your hair?" I got bored. I felt like I was stuck in a rut. You know how it is. Sometimes you just need to shed your skin. I stopped right in front of her. The resemblance was terrifying. It was like looking into a mirror from the past. But her eyes were frantic. "I thought you were working," Serafina said, her voice wavering. She tried to laugh, but it came out as a squeak. I came over to keep Kaylin company. He said he was lonely." "That was sweet of you," I said. I looked at Kaylin. "Wasn't it, Kaylin?" "Yeah," Kaylin croaked. "Sweet." "And you're wearing my clothes," I noted, reaching out and fingering the fabric of the cardigan she was wearing. "And my glasses. And is that a wig?" Serafina took a step back. We were just messing around, like old times. You know, role play. Karen said he missed the way we used to dress up." She was throwing him under the bus immediately. "Role play?" I repeated. "Is that what we're calling it?" I looked down at her legs. She was still wearing the leggings, but I knew what was underneath. "Did you show him the tattoo?" I asked. The room went silent. The air was sucked out of the space. Serafina's face went dead white. "What?" "The lotus," I said, smiling without any warmth. "The symbol of rebirth, the one on your inner thigh. Did you show him?" "I don't know what you're talking about," she whispered. "Don't lie to me, Serafina," I snapped, my voice cracking like a whip. "I know about Sunday. I know about the Santel 33. I know about the Wi-Fi being cut, and I know about the $10,000 you just transferred on Kaylin's phone." Serafina looked at Kaylin, betrayal in her eyes. "You told her?" "He didn't have to," I said, pointing to the vent above the TV. "Smile, sister, you're on camera." Serafina spun around, looking at the vent. Then she looked at the kitchen cabinets. Realization crashed over her. You recorded us?" she hissed. The innocent, sweet Ilara act vanished. Her face twisted into the sneer I remembered from high school. "You psycho bitch." "I'm the psycho?" I laughed, a harsh, jagged sound. "You're the one wearing my face, sleeping with my boyfriend, and stealing my money. You're not a sister, Serafina. You're a parasite." She straightened up, crossing her arms. So what? You caught me. Bravo. What are you going to do? Call the cops? We both know I won't. You're too afraid of what I'll tell Julian. You're too afraid of the scandal. She smirked, regaining her confidence. It was consensual, Alara. Kaylin didn't stop me. In fact, she looked at Kaylin with a predatory grin. He seemed to enjoy it quite a bit tonight, even knowing it was me. I looked at Kaylin. He was staring at the floor, unable to meet my eyes. That's the interesting part, I said softly. I saw that too. I turned back to Serafina. But here's the thing you forgot. I'm not the Alara you tormented in high school. I'm not the Alara who cries in the bathroom. I pulled out my phone. I'm the Alara who has the login to your social media accounts because you asked me to manage your brand when you started your yoga influencer phase 2 months ago. You never changed the password. Serafina's smirk faltered. So, I tapped the screen. While I was in the hotel across the street watching you rob my boyfriend, I drafted a little post. It's scheduled to go live on your Instagram, Facebook, and linked to Julian's family business page in exactly, I checked my watch, 5 minutes. What did you write? She demanded, stepping forward. I didn't write anything. I just uploaded a video, a highlight reel, if you will. Clips from tonight. The part where you mock Julian. The part where you admit to the tattoo. The part where you steal the money. You can't, she screamed. Julian will leave me. His family will destroy me. Then you'd better start running, I said calmly, because Julian follows your account, and he has push notifications on. Serafina lunged for me. She was fast, but I was ready. I sidestepped, and she stumbled, crashing into the coffee table. Give me the phone, she shrieked. It's in the cloud, Serafina. It's done. You want it to be me. Congratulations. Now you can have my life, because I'm burning yours to the ground. She scrambled up, panting, her wig askew. She looked at Kaylin, then at me. She realized the game was truly up. You'll regret this, she spat. I'll tell everyone Kaylin was in on it. Go ahead, Kaylin spoke up for the first time, his voice quiet but grim. I deserve it. Serafina grabbed her purse, my purse, and ran for the door. She didn't even look back. She slammed it so hard the frame rattled. I stood there in the silence, the adrenaline fading, leaving me shaking. I looked at Kaylin. He was still standing by the couch, looking like a broken man. I said, You hesitated. He looked up. What? When she came in, when she kissed you, you hesitated. I was playing the part, he pleaded. No, you weren't, I said, walking over to the window to watch Serafina run out of the building and into the rain. I turned to face him. She's gone, Kaylin, but now we have to talk about you. We have to talk about you. The words hung in the air, heavier than the humidity of the storm outside. Kaylin looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time since I'd walked through the door. His eyes traced the sharp line of my silver bob, the dark lipstick, the trench coat. He looked like he was trying to find the woman he'd proposed to move in with 3 years ago, but she wasn't there. Alara, he started, reaching a hand out. I did what you asked. I followed the plan. You followed the script, I corrected, stepping out of his reach. But the improvisation, that was all you. I walked over to the kitchen island where my laptop was still sitting in my bag. I didn't take it out. Instead, I picked up the glass of wine Serafina had poured. I stared at the dark red liquid. When she touched you tonight, I said, keeping my voice terrifyingly level, when she sat on your lap, you weren't repulsed. You were comfortable. I was terrified, Kaylin protested, his voice rising. I was terrified she'd figure it out. I was trying to keep her calm until you got here. No, I said, turning to face him. I watched the footage from Sunday too, Kaylin, before I knew it wasn't me. I watched it back in my head 1,000 times. You said she was different. You said she was wilder. You liked it. I took a sip of the wine. It tasted bitter. And tonight, I continued, when she started talking about the money, you didn't just hand over the phone. You looked at her with this pathetic hope, like maybe if she stole the money, you could still go to Bali with her. Kaylin slumped onto the bar stool, burying his face in his hands. I don't know what you want me to say. Yes, she's exciting. Yes, for a few months, I thought you had finally loosened up. I thought we were evolving. Is that a crime? To want your girlfriend to be a little more adventurous? It is when you can't tell the difference between your girlfriend and her sociopathic twin, I snapped. You didn't want me to be adventurous, Kaylin. You wanted her. You just wanted her in my packaging, so you didn't have to deal with the baggage. He looked up, his eyes wet. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed. You let her access your life savings. You let her link her device to your account. You are a willing participant in your own robbery because you were thinking with your dick. I set the glass down hard enough that the stem snapped. Red wine spilled across the white granite counter, looking like a fresh wound. Get out, I said. What? Get out of my apartment, tonight. Alara, please, it's late. Where am I supposed to go? Go to a hotel. Go to your brother's. I don't care, but you cannot sleep here. This is my apartment too, he shouted, standing up. My name is on the lease. Actually, I said, a cold smile touching my lips, you remember when we renewed last year? Your credit score had taken a hit from those student loans you consolidated. The landlord put it in my name only to keep the deposit down. You're an occupant, Kaylin, not a tenant. He stared at me, mouth agape. He had forgotten. I have 30 minutes, I said, or I call the police and show them the video of you conspiring with a known fraudster to launder money. I was the victim. Were you? I tilted my head. The video shows you unlocking your phone for her. It shows you agreeing to the transfer. It shows no coercion. Without the context of our little sting operation, which I can easily delete, it looks like you two were planning to run away together with the cash. Kalen paled. He realized I held all the cards. The cameras, the footage, the lease. You're enjoying this, he whispered. You're actually enjoying this. I'm surviving this, I said. There's a difference. He packed a bag in silence. I watched him from the hallway, arms crossed. When he walked to the door, he paused. I loved you, Alara, he said. The real you. You loved a version of me that was convenient, I said. Goodbye, Kalen. He left. The door clicked shut. I was alone. The silence in the apartment was deafening. I looked at the spilled wine on the counter. I looked at the broken glass. I looked at the iPad Serafina had abandoned on the couch. I sat down and picked it up. My hands were shaking now. The adrenaline was crashing, leaving a cold, hollow ache in my chest. I had just nuked my relationship and my sister's life in the span of an hour. But I wasn't done. I opened the banking app on the iPad. The joint account was there, $10,000, plus the $5,000 Kalen had already had in there, $15,000 total. Serafina had access, yes, but so did I. I initiated a transfer. Not to my personal account. That would be theft. I transferred every cent to a holding account I had set up an hour ago online, an account specifically for the Serafina Recovery Fund. Then I logged into the joint account settings and flagged it for fraud. I reported the device Serafina had linked, her iPhone, as stolen. The bank would freeze everything. Her access would be cut. Kalen's access would be frozen pending investigation. They would both be locked out of the money. Kalen would have to explain to the bank why his girlfriend, who wasn't his girlfriend, had access. It would be a bureaucratic nightmare that would take months to untangle. Petty? Maybe. Necessary? Absolutely. Then I turned my attention to the bigger fire, Julian. I checked Serafina's Instagram. The video had been up for 20 minutes. Views, 4,502. Comments, 312. I scrolled through them. OMG, is this real? Isn't she engaged to Julian Thorne? Who is the guy? Wait, isn't that her sister's boyfriend? My phone buzzed. It was Julian. I stared at the screen. I didn't want to answer. I wanted to let the internet do the work. But Julian was innocent in this. He was collateral damage. I picked up. Alara? His voice was tight, controlled, but I could hear the tremor. Hi, Julian. Is it true? He asked, no preamble. The video. Is it a deep fake? Serafina she's here. She's hysterical. She says you made it with AI. She says you're trying to frame her. Of course she was. Julian, I said softly, look at the tattoo on her thigh, the lotus. Ask her to wipe it off with alcohol. If it comes off, it's fake. If it's fake, ask yourself why she has a fake tattoo of a symbol she told Kalen was permanent. There was a long silence on the other end. She says it's real, Julian said. She's showing it to me now. Rubbing alcohol, Julian, I repeated. Or baby oil. Just try. I heard muffled voices, Serafina screaming. Don't touch me. You don't trust me? She's lying. Then a sound of a struggle? No, just movement. Then silence. Julian. It came off, he said. His voice was dead. It smeared right off. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. She's crying. She's saying it was a joke. She's saying you put her up to it for a TikTok challenge. Do you believe that? No, he said. The way she looked at that man in the video, that wasn't acting. And the money transfer. He sighed, a sound of infinite weariness. She used my credit card to buy the Sentow 33. I saw the charge last week, but didn't think anything of it. She told me it was a gift for you. I hate sandalwood, I said. I know, Julian said. I remember you saying that at the engagement party. What are you going to do? I asked. I'm going to ask her to leave, he said. And then I'm going to call my mother. The wedding is off. I'm sorry, Julian. Don't be, he said. You saved me from a mistake, a very expensive mistake. He hung up. I put the phone down. It was done. Serafina was exposed. Kalen was gone. The money was frozen. I looked around my apartment. It felt huge. It felt empty. I walked to the bathroom and turned on the shower. I stripped off the black trench coat, the clothes, the war paint. I stood under the scalding water, scrubbing my skin until it was pink. I wanted to wash the feeling of Kalen's hesitation off me. I wanted to wash the memory of Serafina's smirk away. When I stepped out, wrapped in a towel, I caught my reflection in the mirror. The silver hair was wet, plastered to my skull. I looked severe. I looked like a stranger. But for the first time in my life, I didn't look like Serafina. I touched the glass. Hello, Alara, I whispered. The next few weeks were a different kind of chaos. Serafina went nuclear. She posted videos crying about how I was a narcissist who had always been jealous of her, how I manipulated Kalen, how I deep-faked the evidence. But the internet is a fickle beast, and the receipts were too strong. Julian's public statement announcing the end of the engagement, citing breach of trust, was the nail in the coffin. She tried to come to the apartment twice. I didn't answer the door. I just watched her on the camera, banging on the wood, screaming my name. Eventually, the building manager escorted her out and threatened a restraining order. Kalen sent flowers. I threw them in the trash. He sent letters. I burned them. He showed up at the hospital once, waiting by my car. I miss you, he said, looking haggard. I made a mistake, a huge mistake, but we can fix this. You miss the safety, I told him, unlocking my car. You miss the nurse who pays half the rent and rubs your feet. You don't miss me. That's not true. It is, I said, getting in, because if you missed me, you would have known it wasn't me. I drove away and didn't look back. 6 months later, I was sitting in a tattoo parlor in the East Village. The buzz of the needle was a steady, grounding hum. Almost done, the artist said. You sit like a rock. Most people flinch at this spot. I've had worse pain, I said, staring at the ceiling. Take a look. I sat up and looked at my inner thigh. There, just above the knee, was a small, intricate design. It wasn't a lotus, it was a mirror, an ornate Victorian hand mirror, but the glass in the center was cracked, and in the shards of the glass, a tiny silver dagger. It was beautiful. It was permanent. It symbolizes breaking the reflection, I told the artist. Deep, he said, wiping it down. I like it. I paid him and walked out into the sunshine. It was spring. The air was crisp. I ran a hand through my hair. It was still silver, though I was keeping it a bit longer now, a choppy, textured lob. My phone buzzed. An unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Ilara? It was Serafina. Her voice sounded small, broken. What do you want, Serafina? I'm in trouble, Al, she said. Julian is suing me for the ring. I sold it, Al. I don't have the money. And Mom and Dad, they won't talk to me. They saw the video. And? I have nowhere to go, she sobbed. I'm sleeping on a friend's couch, but I have to leave tomorrow. Please, I'm your sister. We're twins. We're two halves of the same whole. I stopped walking. I looked at my reflection in a shop window. The silver hair, the sharp clothes, the new tattoo hidden under my jeans. No, I said. What? We're not halves, I said. We never were. You were just a shadow that thought it was the object. Ilara, please. I'm sorry. I'll do anything. Then do this, I said. Disappear. Become someone else. Because Ilara, the Ilara you knew, she doesn't exist anymore. I hung up. I blocked the number. I walked down the street, feeling the sting of the fresh tattoo on my leg. It hurt, but it was a good hurt. It was real. It was mine. I wasn't a twin anymore. I was just me, and for the first time, that was more than enough. I thought the silence was the end. I thought blocking the number, getting the tattoo, and reclaiming my reflection was the period at the end of the sentence. But with Serafina, there is no period. There are only ellipses waiting to trail off into the next disaster. 2 days after I hung up on her, I was called into the director of nursing's office. Susan, my boss for the last 4 years, looked grim. She didn't offer me a seat, which was the first red flag. She was holding a file, a thick black personnel file, and her knuckles were white. Ilara, she said, her voice tight. We received a notification from the State Board of Nursing this morning. My stomach dropped. What? Why? There's been a complaint, Susan said. A malpractice complaint regarding a procedure performed at Velvet Touch Aesthetics in Soho. The client suffered a severe infection in partial facial paralysis following a filler injection. I stared at her, blinking. I don't understand. I don't work at a med spa. I work here, exclusively. Susan slid a piece of paper across the desk. It was a photocopy of a credential verification form. It had my name, my license number, my nursing school graduation date, and a photo. It was me, but it wasn't me. The woman in the photo had chestnut brown hair, soft waves, and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. It was a photo from my Facebook profile from 2 years ago. The clinic claims you've been working there part-time for 3 months, Susan said. They have your signature on employment forms. They have copies of your ID. The room spun. 3 months? That meant she started this right after the breakup, right after I drained the bank account. She didn't disappear. She didn't find a couch to sleep on. She stole my career. Susan, that's not me, I said, my voice rising. That's my twin sister, Serafina. She's impersonating me. Susan looked skeptical. Your twin sister is performing medical procedures using your license? Does she have medical training? No, I whispered, the horror setting in. She went to art school. She doesn't know the difference between an artery and a vein. Ilara, this is serious, Susan said. Until this is investigated, I have to place you on administrative leave. If she really is out there injecting people under your license, your career is over. You could go to prison for fraud if they think you're complicit. I walked out of the hospital in a daze, clutching the suspension letter. The rain had returned, a gray drizzle that matched my mood. I felt a familiar vibration in my pocket. My phone. It was a text from Kalen. I hadn't blocked him on email, and apparently he had found a way to text me through an internet relay service. I know about the clinic. We need to talk. I stared at the screen. Kalen knew? I called him. He picked up on the first ring. Where are you? I asked. He said, I'm outside your apartment. I've been waiting for 3 hours. I drove home, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles cracked. When I pulled up, Kalen was sitting on the stoop of my building, soaked to the bone. He looked thinner than the last time I saw him. His eyes were dark and hollow. Start talking, I said, not inviting him inside. I saw her, Kalen said, wiping rain from his face. I was walking past this ritzy med spa on Spring Street last week. I saw you through the window. You were wearing a white lab coat. You looked happy. He looked down at his boots. For a second, I thought maybe you had moved on, got a new job. But then I saw the way she held the syringe. She held it like a paintbrush, Elle, not a medical instrument. Why didn't you tell me immediately? I snapped. I did some digging first, Kalen said. I made an appointment. My jaw dropped. You went in there? I booked a consultation for Botox, he said. I wore a hat and sunglasses. She didn't recognize me at first. She was high, Ilara. I could smell it on her. Not weed, something chemical. She was manic. She was talking about how she's the lead injector and how much money she's making. She's destroying me, I said, pacing the sidewalk. She's going to kill someone and I'm going to be the one charged with manslaughter. I recorded the consultation, Kalen said quietly. I stopped pacing. I looked at him. I have her on tape, he continued, introducing herself as Elara Vance, offering to do an off-the-books procedure for cash, and he hesitated. She bragged about it. She told me, thinking I was just some random guy, that she used to be a boring trauma nurse, but realized she had an eye for beauty. Give it to me, I said, holding out my hand. I'll give it to you, Kaylin said, but I want to help you take her down. I don't need your help, Kaylin. You've done enough. You can't walk into that clinic alone. She's dangerous, Elara. She's cornered. If she's high and she realizes the game is up, she might hurt you. I'm the only one who knows the truth besides you. I looked at his desperate, pathetic face. He was trying to buy redemption. I didn't care about his redemption, but he was right about one thing. Serafina was cornered, and a cornered animal bites. Fine, I said. Get in the car. We drove to Soho in silence. The city lights reflected on the wet pavement, blurring into streaks of gold and red. Velvet Touch Aesthetics was located in a trendy loft building with frosted glass windows and gold lettering. It looked legitimate. That was the scary part. She works late on Thursdays, Kaylin said. She told me she does the VIP clients after hours, cash only. I checked my watch. 8:30 p.m. Here's the plan, I said, turning off the engine. You go in first. You have an appointment. Get her into a treatment room. Keep her talking. I'm coming in right behind you. And then what? And then I perform a little surgery, I said coldly. I'm going to excise the tumor. Kaylin nodded and got out. I watched him walk to the door and buzz the intercom. A moment later, the door buzzed, and he slipped inside. I waited 60 seconds. Then I followed. I caught the door just before it latched. The waiting room was plush, smelling of eucalyptus and expensive candles, and underneath it, the faint, cloying scent of Santal 33. The receptionist desk was empty. I heard voices coming from a hallway in the back. Didn't think you'd be back so soon, Serafina's voice drifted out. It was my voice, but lighter, faker. Did you decide on the forehead or the crow's feet? Actually, Kaylin's voice was shaky. I wanted to talk about the payment. I crept down the hallway, my footsteps silent on the plush carpet. I reached the open door of treatment room B. Serafina was standing by a tray of medical supplies, wearing a tight white lab coat embroidered with Elara Vance RN. She had a syringe in her hand. Her hair was still brown, still styled like the old me. It was like looking at a ghost of my past life. Cash is king, sweetie, she said, tapping the syringe. No paper trails. That's how we keep the prices so low. Serafina, I said. She froze. The syringe didn't drop, but her hand twitched violently. Slowly, she turned around. When she saw me, her eyes didn't widen in fear like they did at the apartment. They narrowed. Her pupils were pinpoint small. Kaylin was right. She was on something. Well, she drawled, a crooked smile spreading across her face. The silver fox returns. I was wondering when you'd show up. Put the needle down, I said, stepping into the room. Why? I'm just doing my job. Our job. You paralyzed a woman's face, I said, moving closer. The board of nursing knows. The police are going to know soon. Oops, she giggled. Occupational hazard. You know how it is, sis. Sometimes you miss a nerve. Sometimes you hit one. She looked at Kaylin. And you brought the ex-boyfriend. How touching. Is this a reunion tour? It's over, Serafina, Kaylin said, standing up. I have you on tape, admitting fraud, admitting you're not licensed. Serafina's face darkened. The playful mask slipped. You taped me? We're sending it to Julian, too, I lied, and the clinic owner, and every news outlet in the city. Fake nurse disfigures clients. It'll be a great headline. You wouldn't, she snarled. You'll ruin your own name. It's your name on the door, Elara. I already changed my name, I said calmly. It was a bluff, but she didn't know that. Legally, yesterday, Elara Vance is dead. You're just impersonating a corpse. Serafina looked around the room, her eyes darting frantically. She looked at the tray of instruments, scalpels, needles, glass vials. I worked hard for this, she whispered, her voice trembling with rage. I finally have respect. People look at me and they see you. They trust me. I'm good at it. You're a fraud, I said, and you're done. I reached for my phone to dial 911. I knew I said no police, but this was a medical emergency. She was unstable. Don't, she screamed. She lunged, not at me, at Kaylin. She jammed the needle she was holding toward his neck. Kaylin shouted and threw his arm up, blocking her. The needle plunged into his forearm. He howled in pain and shoved her back. Serafina stumbled, crashing into the instrument tray. Glass shattered. Vials of Botox and lidocaine smashed onto the floor. You ruined everything, she screamed, grabbing a scalpel from the floor. She was hyperventilating, her eyes wild. I just wanted what you had. It comes so easy for you. The job, the guy, the life. Why can't I have it? Because you didn't earn it, I yelled back. You steal it. She swung the scalpel in the air, keeping us back. I'm not going to jail. I'm not going back to being the screw-up sister. I'd rather be nothing. She held the scalpel to her own wrist. Serafina, stop, I said, stepping forward, my nurse training kicking in despite the hatred. Put it down. Don't come near me, she shrieked. I'll do it. I swear to God. The air in the room was toxic with the smell of spilled chemicals and fear. Kaylin was clutching his arm, blood seeping through his shirt. Kaylin muttered through gritted teeth. Let her do it. No, I said, because if she dies here wearing my name tag in a clinic she fraudulently worked in, I will never escape her. She becomes the martyr. I become the sister who pushed her to suicide. I looked Serafina in the eye. You want to win? I asked softly. Cutting your wrists isn't winning, it's quitting, and you're too narcissistically attached to this world to quit, Serafina. She hesitated, the blade trembling against her skin. You think you're smart? I continued, taking a slow step forward. You think you're the better version of me? Prove it. Walk out of here. Leave the city. Actually, disappear this time. If you die, you're just a tragedy. If you survive, maybe you can actually become someone. I have no money, she wept, the rage dissolving into self-pity. You took it all. I have $15,000 in a holding account, I said. The money you stole. I didn't spend it. It's sitting there. Her eyes flickered. You'd give it to me? I'll transfer it to an offshore account. One time, but you leave the country. Tonight. You go to a place where no one knows Alara Vance, and you never, ever come back. Alara, no, Kaylin protested. She stabbed me. Shut up, I silenced him. I looked at my sister, the mirror image of the woman I used to be. $15K, she sniffled. That's not enough. It's enough for a plane ticket and a fake ID, which I'm sure you know how to get. Take the deal, Serafina, or the police arrive in 3 minutes and you go to prison for assault and medical battery. You'll look terrible in orange. She lowered the scalpel. She looked at the shattered glass, then at me. You're colder than I ever was, she whispered. I learned from the best, I replied. She dropped the blade. It clattered on the tile. Send the money, she said. I'm going to Mexico. Go, I pointed to the back exit. Now. She stripped off the lab coat and threw it on the floor. She grabbed her purse. She didn't look at Kaylin. She paused at the door, looking at me one last time. I really did the tattoo better, she said. Then she was gone. I let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for a lifetime. I rushed to Kaylin. Let me see the arm, I said, professional mode taking over. It's deep, he winced. Did you mean it? About the money? Yes, I said, examining the puncture wound. It wasn't life-threatening, but it needed stitches. It's the price of a clean slate. If she's in prison, I have to visit her. I have to testify. I have to be the twin. If she's in Mexico, she's just a memory. I wrapped his arm with gauze from the cabinet. You handled that, Kaylin said, looking at me with a mix of awe and fear. You really handled that. I told you, I said, tying the bandage tight. Ilara is dead. Long live the queen. I looked at the lab coat on the floor. Ilara Vance, RN. I picked it up. Come on, I said. We need to get you to an ER, and then I have to call the board and tell them the imposter fled the scene. What about us? Kaylin asked, hope creeping into his voice again. We just went through war together. I stopped at the door. I looked at him. Really looked at him. He was bleeding for me. He had helped me. But every time I looked at him, I saw Serafina's hands on him. I saw his hesitation. There is no us, Kaylin, I said gently. You're just the man who knew me when I was soft. I can't be with someone who reminds me of what I had to kill to survive. I opened the door. But I'll drive you to the hospital. As we walked out into the rainy night, my phone buzzed. Notification from the bank. The transfer to the holding account had been accessed. Not by me. She had the codes. She always had the codes. She hadn't waited for me to send it. She'd been waiting for me to unlock it. I smiled. She was gone. And I was finally, truly alone. Or so I thought. A week later, a package arrived at my apartment. No return address. Inside was a single object. A bottle of Lalabo Santal 33. And a note. Mexico is beautiful, but I think I like your apartment better. Keep the key under the mat for me. S. I stared at the note. The blood drained from my face. She wasn't in Mexico. I walked to the front door and threw it open. I lifted the welcome mat. The spare key, the one I had taken back months ago, was there, sitting in the center of the concrete. She had been here. Today. I looked down the hallway. It was empty. But the air smelled faintly, undeniably, of sandalwood. I went back inside and locked the door. I bolted the deadbolt. I engaged the chain. I picked up the bottle of perfume and walked to the trash can. I hovered over it, then stopped. I walked to the bathroom and set the bottle on the counter next to my own perfume. Let her come. I looked at my silver hair in the mirror. I touched the tattoo of the broken mirror on my thigh. The game wasn't over. It had just leveled up. And this time, I wasn't going to play defense. I reached into the drawer and pulled out the pistol I had bought the day after the clinic incident. Welcome home, sister, I whispered to the reflection. I didn't sleep for 72 hours. I sat in the armchair facing the door, the Glock 19 resting on the coffee table next to a cold cup of coffee. Every creak of the floorboards, every rattle of the HVAC system sounded like her. The scent of sandalwood was phantom thick in the air, a psychological weapon she deployed with a single bottle. She was playing with me. She had the money. She could have been on a beach in Tulum. Instead, she was here, likely watching me lose my mind. On the morning of the 4th day, the exhaustion made me hallucinations. I saw her in the periphery of my vision, in the kitchen, on the balcony. I knew I couldn't stay in the apartment. It was a kill box, and I was the target. I needed to flush her out. I grabbed the iPad she had abandoned that night, the one I used to drain the account. I hadn't turned it on since. I plugged it in. As it booted up, I prayed she hadn't wiped her iCloud remotely. The screen lit up. Enter passcode. I typed in our birthday. It unlocked. I went straight to the photos. There were hundreds of selfies. Her in the clinic lab coat, her with Kaylin, her wearing my clothes. But the most recent photo, taken yesterday, stopped my heart. It was a photo of my front door, taken from the hallway. But the angle was wrong. It wasn't taken from the elevator or the stairwell. It was taken from above, high above. I zoomed in. The perspective was distorted, looking down through the slats of the ventilation grate in the hallway ceiling. She wasn't just in the building, she was in the building. I grabbed the gun, tucked it into the waistband of my jeans, and pulled on a heavy hoodie. I dragged a chair out into the hallway. The building was an old converted textile factory. The ceilings were high, with industrial ducts running through the crawl spaces between floors. I stood on the chair and pushed the grate up. It gave way easily. Too easily. The screws had been removed. I shone my phone's flashlight into the darkness. There was a mattress, a sleeping bag, empty takeout containers, and a direct line of sight to my door. She had been living in the crawl space directly above my apartment, listening to me, watching me come and go. I pulled myself up, ignoring the claustrophobia. The space smelled of rot and that damned perfume. I crawled toward the mattress, a sketchbook lying open. I picked it up. It wasn't art. It was a plan. Phase 1, infiltration, complete. Phase 2, discredit, complete. Phase 3, isolation, complete. Phase 4, extraction. Under extraction, she had sketched a crude drawing. It looked like a medical procedure, but the labels were terrifying. Bone marrow, organ match. My blood ran cold. She didn't just want my life. She wanted my biology. We were identical matches. If she needed something, a kidney, marrow, blood, I was her walking spare parts bank. Was she sick? Or was this just the ultimate form of consumption? Then I saw the date on the next page. Tonight. The boathouse. Our parents' old derelict boathouse on the Hudson, about an hour north of the city. We hadn't been there in a decade. It was isolated, rotting, and miles from help. Why tonight? My phone buzzed in my pocket. A FaceTime request. From Kalen. I hesitated. I hadn't spoken to him since I dropped him at the ER. I accepted the call, keeping the camera pointed at the dark crawl space. Kalen? The face that appeared on the screen wasn't Kalen's. It was Serafina. She was wearing a silver wig, a cheap, synthetic copy of my new hair. She had painted her lips dark red. Hello, twin, she smiled. The background was dark, wood-paneled. The boathouse. Where is he? I asked, my voice echoing in the ductwork. She turned the camera. Kalen was tied to a chair in the center of the room. He looked bad. His face was bruised, and the bandage on his arm was soaked through with fresh blood. He was unconscious, his head lolling on his chest. He came looking for me, she said, flipping the camera back to her face. He's very persistent. He thought he could talk me down, save me, save us. She laughed, manic and high-pitched. He really can't tell us apart, Elle. Even now, he kept calling me Alara until I hit him with a tire iron. Let him go, Serafina. He's nothing to you. He's bait, she said simply. Phase 4, Elle. You come to the boathouse. You bring your passport, your birth certificate, and the rest of the money. You sign over your rights to the trust fund Mom set up for when we turn 30. We turn 30 in 2 weeks, I said. That's what this is about? The trust fund? Mom and Dad cut me out years ago. But you, the golden child, you get $500,000. I want it. If I come there, I said, I'm coming to kill you. I know, she smiled, showing teeth. You still have that pesky nurse's conscience. You won't let him die. You saved him at the clinic, didn't you? She pulled a lighter out of her pocket and flicked it on. She held it near a pile of oil-soaked rags near Kalen's feet. 1 hour, she said. Come alone, or I burn the house down with Romeo inside. The screen went black. I stared at the phone in the dark crawl space. She was right. I couldn't let him burn. Not because I loved him. That love had died the moment I saw the hesitation in his eyes, but because he was a human being who was only in this mess because of me. I needed supplies. I went to my medical bag. I took a scalpel, a vial of succinylcholine, a paralytic agent I had accidentally retained from my last rotation, and a syringe. I grabbed a roll of duct tape and zip ties. I checked the magazine in the Glock. 15 rounds. I walked to the mirror in the hallway. I looked at the silver hair, the dark eyes, the scar of the woman I was becoming. Phase 4, I whispered. Extraction. I drove north. The rain had turned into a torrential downpour, washing the highway clean. The drive gave me time to think. Serafina expected me to walk in the front door, negotiate, maybe try to be a hero. She expected the nurse. She expected the sister. She didn't expect the mirror. I parked a mile away from the boathouse, hiding my car in a dense patch of woods off the main road. I moved on foot through the mud and wet leaves. The boathouse sat on the edge of the water, a dark looming shape against the gray sky. Light flickered inside. I didn't go to the door. I went to the water. The Hudson was freezing, but I waded in, the water rising to my chest. The boathouse had a rotting deck that extended over the river, with a trap door for pulling up small skiffs. We used to play there as kids. Serafina probably forgot about it. She hated the water. I swam silently under the deck. I could hear them above me. The wood was old, gaping with cracks. She's not coming. Serafina's voice was muffled but audible. She doesn't care about you, Kalen. She's cold now, like me. She'll come, Kalen groaned. He was awake. She's not you. We're the same, she screamed. A heavy thud followed, the sound of a kick. We are the same blood, the same face. The only difference is she got the luck and I got the rot. I found the trap door. It was rusted shut. I braced my legs against the pylons and pushed up with my shoulder. I gritted my teeth, straining until spots danced in my eyes. The rust groaned, then gave way with a screech of metal. I froze. What was that? Seraphina's footsteps pounded overhead. Probably a rat, she muttered. Place is infested. I pushed the door open an inch. I was directly behind a stack of old crates in the corner of the room. I pulled myself up, dripping wet, shivering from the cold. I crouched behind the crates, peering through the gap. Seraphina was pacing. She still had the gun, a small revolver she must have bought on the street. Kalen was bleeding from a cut on his forehead. The pile of rags was still there, unlit. She checked her watch. 5 minutes, then I light it. You're going to kill your own sister? Kalen rasped. No, she said, turning to look at the door. I'm going to become her. Once she's dead and you're dead, who's to say I'm not Alara? I have the hair now. I have the tattoo on the thigh. I got a real one yesterday, just like hers. I saw the post about the mirror. I copied it. My hand went to my thigh. She had copied my mirror tattoo? That was it. That was the violation that snapped the last tether of restraint. I prepared the syringe with a paralytic. Seraphina! I yelled, throwing my voice toward the front door. She spun around, raising the revolver toward the entrance. Ilara, come in with your hands up. While she was focused on the door, I stepped out from behind the crates. I'm not at the door, I said. She whirled around, eyes wide. I didn't hesitate. I didn't speechify. I raised the Glock and fired. Not at her head, at her hand. The bullet shattered the revolver in her grip. She screamed, a sound of pure agony, and dropped the gun. She clutched her mangled hand, falling to her knees. I sprinted forward. Before she could recover, I kicked her in the chest, knocking her flat onto her back. I straddled her, pinning her arms with my knees. She thrashed, spitting blood and curses at me. You shot me! You bitch! You shot me! I missed, I said, cold as the river water dripping from my clothes. I was aiming for the head. Do it! She screamed, her face contorted into a mask of hate. Kill me! Prove you're just like me! No, I said. I uncapped the syringe. What is that? Her eyes widened in genuine terror. Ilara, what is that? It's succinylcholine, I said calmly. It causes complete muscular paralysis. You won't be able to move, you won't be able to speak, but you'll be awake. You'll feel everything. No, please. I jammed the needle into her thigh, right through the fresh, healing tattoo of the mirror she had stolen from me. I pushed the plunger. That belongs to me, I whispered. She gasped. Within seconds, her thrashing stopped. Her arms went limp, her legs stopped kicking, her jaw went slack. Only her eyes could move, darting wildly, filled with a horror that transcended words. I stood up. Kalen was staring at me. He looked terrified. Alara, he whispered. Is she dead? No, I said. She's just paused. I walked over to Kalen and used the scalpel to cut his ropes. He fell forward into my arms, sobbing. You saved me, he cried. Thank God, Alara. We can call the police now. They'll take her. I pushed him back, holding him at arm's length. I told you, I said. No police. But she's paralyzed. She's shot. We have to explain this. We aren't explaining anything, I said. I looked at Seraphina's frozen body. The fire she had prepared was still waiting. Kalen, I said, go to the car, drive away. Forget you were ever here. What are you going to do? I picked up the lighter she had dropped. I'm going to finish the renovation, I said. You can't burn her alive, Kalen screamed. She's not going to burn, I said. The drug wears off in 20 minutes. Just enough time for me to stage the scene. Stage it how? A drug deal gone wrong, I said. 2 junkies fighting over a stash. A tragic fire. Accidental. Alara, this is murder. This is surgery, I corrected. I'm cutting out the cancer. I pointed the Glock at Kalen. Go. He looked at the gun. He looked at my eyes. He realized I wasn't the woman he knew. I wasn't even the woman who walked into the clinic last week. He turned and ran out the door, into the rain. I heard his car start and peel away. I was alone with her. I knelt beside Seraphina. Her eyes were locked on mine, screaming silently. I'm not going to kill you, I whispered. That would be too easy. And Kalen is right. I'm not a murderer. I reached into her pocket and took her phone. I took her wallet. I took the fake ID she had made. But Ilara Vance needs to die, I said. I stood up and walked to the pile of rags. I lit them. The fire caught instantly, licking up the dry, rotting wood of the walls. The heat was intense. I dragged Seraphina, heavy and limp, out the back door onto the deck. The rain hissed against the fire. I rolled her body off the deck. She hit the freezing water with a splash. She couldn't swim. She couldn't move. But the life jacket I had strapped to her chest, the one from the emergency kit under the crates, would keep her face up. She would drift. The current flows south, I told her bobbing form. By the time the drug wears off, you'll be miles away. You have no money, no ID, no phone, and a shattered hand. I watched her drift into the darkness of the river. You wanted a new life, Seraphina, I said. Now you have nothing. You are a ghost. I turned back to the boathouse. It was fully engulfed now, a beacon of orange against the black sky. I took out my own ID, my nursing license, my passport. I threw them into the fire. I watched Ilara Vance burn. Then I walked into the woods toward the car I had stashed. I wasn't Ilara anymore. I wasn't Serafina. I was the reflection that stepped out of the glass, and I had a lot of work to do. 6 months later. The coffee shop in Seattle smells different than the ones in New York. Less burnt, more like roasted hazelnuts in rain. I like it. I sat by the window, watching the pedestrians dodge the drizzle. I wore my hair short now, dyed a deep velvet black. No more silver, no more brown, just the void. My name is Mira now. Mira Stone. It's a good name. Solid. Unassuming. I work as a medical researcher for a biotech firm. No patient contact, no scrubs, just data, patterns, and silence. It suits me. I checked my watch. 2 p.m. My phone buzzed. A notification from a news alert I had set up months ago. Update. Body found in Hudson River identified. My heart skipped a beat, then steadied. I opened the article. Authorities have identified the remains found near the Bear Mountain Bridge as Kaylin R., a 29-year-old architect from New York City who went missing 6 months ago following a suspicious fire at a family property. Kaylin. I read the rest, my breath catching in my throat. The cause of death was ruled as drowning, though toxicology reports indicate high levels of alcohol in his system. His car was found submerged nearby. Police suspect he may have driven into the river in a state of disorientation following the fire. I set the phone down. My hands were trembling. He hadn't driven away. I remembered the night at the boathouse. I remembered pointing the gun at him and telling him to leave. I remembered hearing his car peel away, but the road from the boathouse was treacherous, windy, unlit, slick with mud. If he was panicked, if he was driving too fast, he went into the river. I closed my eyes. Kaylin was dead, the last link to my old life, the last witness. Except one. I scrolled down. Was there any mention of a woman? A second body? No other victims were recovered. Serafina. She was out there. The paralysis would have worn off within 30 minutes. The current was strong that night, but the life jacket would have kept her afloat. She would have washed up somewhere downstream, hurt, broken, but alive. I took a sip of my coffee. It tasted like ash. I had killed Alara Vance. I had inadvertently killed Kaylin, but the monster had survived. My phone buzzed again. An email. To mira.stone@biotech.inc. I stared at the screen. No one had this email address. I had created it when I moved here. It was secure, encrypted. I opened it. There was no text, just an attachment. A photo. It was taken from a distance, through a window. A coffee shop window. It was a photo of me, sitting right here, right now. I looked up, scanning the street. The rain blurred everything. Pedestrians in gray coats, cars splashing through puddles. Then I saw her. Standing on the corner under a black umbrella, she was wearing a thick coat, her right hand heavily bandaged and held in a sling. Her hair was platinum blonde, almost white. She wasn't looking at her phone. She was looking directly at me. She raised her good hand. She waved. It was a small, mocking wave. A hello. A promise. My phone pinged again. A second email arrived. You broke the mirror, sis, but you forgot one thing. Shards cut both ways. I looked back at the corner. She was gone. I sat there for a long time. The coffee went cold. I thought about running again. I could go to Europe, Asia. I had the skills. I had the money. But then I touched the tattoo on my thigh, the broken mirror, the dagger. I wasn't Ilara anymore. I wasn't the victim. I picked up my phone and typed a reply. Come and get me. I hit send. I stood up, leaving the coffee on the table. I walked out into the rain, not looking over my shoulder. Let her come. The world wasn't big enough for two of us, and this time I wouldn't rely on fire or water. I smiled, and for the first time in 6 months, it felt real. The hunt was on. I walked back to my apartment with a deliberate, rhythmic pace. Every muscle was coiled, ready to snap. The rain soaked my coat, but I didn't open an umbrella. Umbrellas block your peripheral vision. My apartment in Seattle was in a secure building in Capitol Hill. Key fob entry, elevator codes, reinforced steel doors. It was a fortress compared to the drafty loft in New York. But as I rode the elevator to the 5th floor, I knew steel didn't matter. Serafina wasn't a burglar. She was a virus. She didn't break in. She infected. I cleared my apartment room by room, the Glock drawn. Closet, under the bed, shower, the balcony. Empty. But she had been there. My laptop was open on the kitchen counter. I never leave it open. The screen displayed a paused video. I pressed play. It was footage from a dashboard camera. The angle was low, looking out at a rain-slicked road winding through trees. I recognized the road immediately, the path from the boathouse. The car was moving fast, too fast. I could hear Kaylin's ragged breathing over the audio. He was crying. She's gone, he was muttering. She's crazy. She's gone. Then a shape appeared in the headlights, a figure standing in the middle of the road. Kaylin screamed. He swerved hard to the right. The camera spun violently as the car went off the road, crashing through the brush. The sound of metal crunching against stone was deafening. Then, the splash. The video went dark, but the audio kept rolling. The sound of water rushing in, Kaylin gasping, choking. Then, a new sound. Footsteps on gravel, then on mud. A face appeared in the frame of the submerged sideways car, illuminated by the dying headlights under the water. It was Serafina. She was soaking wet, shivering, clutching her shattered hand. She peered into the window. "Help!" Kaylin's voice bubbled up, faint and terrified. "Serafina, help me!" Serafina stared at him. She didn't smile, she didn't frown. She just watched. "You picked the wrong sister," she whispered. She reached out and turned the dash cam off. The video ended. I stared at the black screen. It wasn't an accident. She had caused the crash. She had stood in the road to force him off, and she had watched him drown. I slammed the laptop shut, the plastic casing cracking under my grip. This wasn't a game anymore. It wasn't about identity theft or sibling rivalry. I was dealing with a predator who had tasted blood and liked it. I went to my bedroom closet and pulled out a lockbox. Inside wasn't money or jewelry. It was my work. Biotech has its perks, specifically access to experimental compounds. I took out a small, sealed vial of a translucent blue liquid. It was a synthesized neurotoxin we use for inhibiting nerve receptors in lab rats. In high doses, it caused blindness. Permanent, irreversible blindness. If she wanted to watch me, I was going to take her eyes. The next morning, I went to work as usual. Routine is camouflage. I walked into the sterile white lobby of Ethereagen and swiped my badge. "Morning, Mira," the guard nodded. "Morning, Sam." I went to my lab station. I had a plan. I needed to synthesize a delivery system, something aerosolized. If I could get her in a confined space... "Miss Stone." I turned. The office manager, aggressive and cheerful, was holding a sleek black gift bag. "Courier dropped this off for you. Said it was urgent. Priority." I stared at the bag. "Who signed for it?" "I did," she smiled. "Nice packaging. Is it a secret Imerer?" "Something like that," I said, taking the bag by the very tips of the handles. I carried it into the biocontainment hood. I wasn't taking chances. I put on gloves and a mask. I opened the bag. Inside was a wig. A short, velvet black wig, styled exactly like my current hair. And a note. "I think this color suits me better. Don't you? See you at home. M." M. She was signing as Mira. My phone rang. It was the building manager of my apartment complex. "Hi, Miss Stone. I just wanted to confirm the work order." "What work order?" I asked, my blood turning to ice. "The lock change," he said. "You called an hour ago. Said you lost your fob and wanted the physical deadbolt changed for security. The locksmith is just finishing up now." "I didn't call you," I said. "But she's right here," the manager sounded confused. "She's standing right in front of me. Hold on." There was a rustling sound. "Hi, Mira." Serafina's voice came through the line. It was perfect. She had dropped the mania. She sounded exactly like me. Calm. Professional. "I think there's a confusion. I'm the one standing in the apartment." "You're dead," I whispered into the phone. "No, silly." She laughed lightly. "I'm Mira Stone. You must be the identity thief I warned the management about." She hung up. I grabbed the vial of neurotoxin and ran. She had escalated to the endgame. She wasn't stalking me. She was evicting me. She was in my apartment, with the locks changed, convincing the world she was the real Mira Stone. If I showed up, she'd have the police waiting to arrest the imposter. She knew I couldn't call the cops. She knew I was technically Ilara Vance, a woman who legally didn't exist anymore and had died in a fire. If I was fingerprinted, the whole charade would collapse. I would be arrested for arson, faked death, and fraud. She had me checkmated. Or so she thought. I drove to the apartment complex, but I didn't park in the garage. I parked in the alleyway behind the building. It was 4 p.m., broad daylight. I couldn't climb the building. I sat in the car and breathed. Think. Think like the scientist. Serafina was inside. She had the high ground. She had the legitimacy of the building manager. But she didn't know the building like I did. I knew that the ventilation system for the 5th floor had a dedicated intake valve on the roof. I knew this because I had complained about the noise 6 months ago, and the maintenance guy showed me the schematics. I pulled the hood of my raincoat up and put on a face mask, standard Seattle attire. I walked to the service entrance. I waited for a delivery driver to buzz in, and I caught the door. I didn't take the elevator. I took the stairs. 20 flights to the roof. My legs burned, but the adrenaline masked the pain. I burst onto the roof, the rain lashing against my face. I found the intake unit labeled 5E-5H. My apartment was 5F. I opened the service panel. The fan blades whirred below, sucking air down into the apartments. I took the vial of neurotoxin out of my pocket. It wasn't enough to flood the whole floor, but if I timed it right... No, that was reckless. Innocent people lived on that floor. I couldn't gas the neighbors. I pocketed the vial. I had to do this the hard way. I went to the roof edge. My balcony was 5 floors down, but the fire escape ladder, the one that was supposed to be locked, ran down the side of the building, passing within 3 feet of my balcony railing. I swung over the ledge. The wind whipped at my coat. One slip and I was pavement. I climbed down, rung by slippery rung. The metal was freezing. My hands ached. I reached the 5th floor. I looked across the gap, 3 feet. My curtains were drawn. I took a breath, vaulted over the railing, and landed softly on my own balcony. The glass door was locked, of course, but I had taped a spare key under the planter box when I moved in, a habit from living with Kaylin that I never broke. I dug my fingers into the wet soil. It was gone. She found it. I looked through the crack in the curtains. She was sitting on my couch, my white leather couch. She was wearing my silk robe. Her hair was black, a wig, but a good one. Her right hand was still heavily bandaged, resting on a pillow. She was drinking wine, watching my TV. She looked so comfortable, so settled. I looked at the glass door. It was double-paned, tempered. Breaking it would make a noise that would alert the whole building. I looked down at the handle. It was a standard latch. I pulled a credit card from my pocket. It was a cliche, but these latches were cheap. I slid the card between the door and the frame, wiggling it, feeling for the catch. Inside, Serafina stiffened. She turned her head toward the balcony. She sensed me. Twin telepathy, or just the shadow I cast? She stood up and walked toward the glass.
I froze against the wall. She pulled the curtain back. We were inches apart, separated only by the glass. She looked out into the gray afternoon. She didn't see me pressed against the brickwork. She unlocked the door. She opened it. I know you're out here, she said softly. I can smell the fear. Or maybe it's that cheap coffee you drink. I didn't hesitate. I spun around the frame and kicked the door hard. It slammed into her face. She screamed, stumbling back, clutching her nose. Blood spurted instantly, staining the white silk robe. I stepped inside and locked the door behind me. I closed the curtains. The apartment was dark. Hello, sister, I said. Serafina scrambled back over the couch, knocking over the wine bottle. You broke my nose. Consider it a matching set with the hand, I said, walking toward her. She reached into the cushions of the couch. I knew what she was reaching for. Don't, I warned. She pulled out a gun, not the revolver from the boathouse. My gun, the Glock 19. She had found it in the lockbox. She leveled it at me. Her hand was shaking, the bandage making her grip awkward. But at this range, she didn't need to be accurate. Get on your knees, she spat, blood running down her chin. Now! I stopped. I raised my hands slowly. You look ridiculous, I said. The wig is cheap. It shines too much under the lights. Shut up, she cocked the gun. I am Mira Stone. I have the lease. I have the job. I have your life. I have a stolen pistol and a broken nose, I said. And you have one bullet in the chamber. That's all I need, she grinned, a horrific, bloody sight. Actually, I said, lowering my hands, you don't even have that. She frowned. What? I took the firing pin out, I lied. Before I left for work this morning, I knew you were coming. I knew you'd find the gun. It was a gamble, a massive, terrifying gamble. I hadn't touched the gun in 2 days. Serafina hesitated. Her eyes flickered to the gun. You're lying, she whispered. Pull the trigger, I challenged. Find out. But if it clicks, I'm going to take that wine bottle and carve your face off. The silence stretched. The rain hammered against the glass. Serafina's finger tightened on the trigger. I braced myself for the bullet. She didn't shoot. She couldn't take the risk. If the gun failed, she was physically outmatched with her bad hand. She lunged at me, using the gun as a club. I ducked, the heavy metal butt of the pistol grazing my ear. I drove my shoulder into her stomach, tackling her to the floor. We rolled, crashing into the coffee table. Glass shattered. She was strong, stronger than she looked. Her mania gave her a hysterical strength. She clawed at my eyes with her good hand, screaming. I pinned her wrist. I punched her in the jaw. Once, twice. Her head snapped back. She went limp for a second. I grabbed the gun from her hand. I stood up, panting, aiming it at her chest. Get up, I said. She groaned, rolling onto her side. She looked up at me, one eye swelling shut. Do it, she wheezed. Shoot me. But remember, the neighbors heard the screaming. They're calling the cops right now. If you kill me, you go to prison forever. I'm not going to kill you, I said. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the vial of neurotoxin. What is that? She asked, shrinking back. It's a mirror, I said. I grabbed her jaw, squeezing hard to force her mouth open. Drink. No, she thrashed, trying to bite me. It won't kill you, I promised, forcing the vial between her bloody teeth. It just dims the lights. I tipped the liquid into her mouth. She gagged, choking, but swallowed. I let her go and stepped back. She coughed, spitting pink foam. What did you do? Poison? Blindness, I said. Total, permanent, optic nerve degradation. Starts in about 10 minutes. Her eyes went wide. She scrambled to her feet, looking around the room as if the light was already fading. You're lying, she screamed. You're lying! Am I? I sat down on the armchair, the gun resting on my knee. Let's wait and see. I'm calling the police. She fumbled for her phone on the floor. Go ahead, I said. Tell them Serafina Vance is alive. Tell them about the boathouse. Tell them about Kaylin. I have the dashcam footage, Sarah. I saved a copy to the cloud. She froze. If the cops come, I said, you go to prison for murder, and you'll go blind in a cell. You'll never see yourself in a mirror again. You'll never see the face you stole. She dropped the phone. She started to cry, a raw, terrified sound. Ilara, please, the antidote. Give me the antidote. There isn't one, I said. I can't be blind, she sobbed. I'm beautiful. I'm you. Not anymore, I said. Now you're just the dark. I checked my watch. You have about 8 minutes before the edges start to blur. I suggest you leave before you can find the door. She looked at me. The hatred was gone, replaced by pure animalistic panic. She ran. She stumbled over the broken table, scrambled to the door, fumbled with the locks, and threw it open. I listened to her running down the hallway. I heard her hit the wall. I heard her sobbing fade into the distance. I stood up.
I locked the door. I walked to the balcony and looked out. 5 minutes later, I saw a figure stumble out of the building. She was running into the street, hands out in front of her, waving frantically at taxis that didn't stop. She tripped over the curb. She got up, turning in circles, looking at the streetlights. She rubbed her eyes. She looked up at my balcony. I don't know if she could see me, or if I was just a blur of gray against the sky. She screamed, a sound of absolute despair. Then she vanished into the rain, swallowed by the city. I went back inside. I picked up the wig she had worn. I threw it in the trash. I poured myself a glass of wine from the bottle she had opened. I sat in the dark, listening to the rain. I waited for the police, but they didn't come. She hadn't called them. She chose the darkness over the cage. I touched the tattoo on my thigh, the broken mirror. It was finished. The reflection was gone. I was mere as stone, and I was the only one left. The wine tasted like iron, or maybe that was just the lingering scent of blood in the room. I finished the glass and set it down on the broken coffee table. The apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels heavy, like a held breath. I stood up and walked over to the gun Serafina had dropped. I picked it up. It was heavy, cold. I ejected the magazine. 1 bullet, just like she said. I pulled back the slide. The firing pin was there, intact, functional. I hadn't removed it. I hadn't touched the gun before I left for work. I started laughing. It was a dry, hollow sound that bounced off the walls. I had bluffed her with her own life, and she had folded. She believed I was the monster so completely that she didn't dare test the trigger. She was right. I spent the next 3 hours scrubbing the white leather couch with bleach and hydrogen peroxide. I picked the shards of the wine bottle out of the rug. I threw the bloody silk robe into a trash bag, weighted it with kitty litter, and walked it down to the dumpster in the alley 3 blocks away. When I came back, the apartment smelled of chlorine and rain. It was sterile, empty. I went to the bathroom and looked at the blue vial. Empty. The neurotoxin was real. It wasn't a placebo. It wasn't a scare tactic. It was a proprietary compound designed to sever the synaptic pathways in the optic nerve. In rats, it took 12 minutes to cause total darkness. In a human of Serafina's weight, probably 8 to 10. She was out there, in a city she didn't know, in the rain, and the lights were going out. I didn't feel guilt. I checked for it, probing my chest like a doctor palpating for a tumor, but there was nothing. Just a vast, cool relief. I slept for 12 hours. The next morning, I went to work. I sat at my computer. I processed data. I drank coffee. I was mere stone. I waited for the police. I waited for a call from a hospital. I waited for the inevitable fallout. But a week passed, then 2. Silence. Serafina hadn't gone to the police. Of course she hadn't. To go to the police, she would have to identify herself. If she said she was Mira Stone, her fingerprints wouldn't match the background check on file for the job. If she said she was Serafina Vance, she admitted to being a woman who supposedly died in a fire 6 months ago, a fire linked to a dead man found in a river. She was trapped in a prison of her own making, the walls made of lies, and the windows painted black. But I needed to know. The scientist in me needed to verify the results of the experiment. I started checking the admissions logs for the state-run indigent care facilities. I filtered for Jane Doe's. I filtered for blindness. I filtered for psychotic break. On the 3rd week, I found her. Patient ID, 29904. Admitted, St. Jude's Psychiatric Ward. Status, indigent, unidentified. Condition, acute sensory loss, severe paranoia, delusions of persecution. I requested a half day off work. St. Jude's was a grim brick fortress on the south side of the city. It smelled of boiled cabbage and antiseptic. I'm looking for a patient, I told the nurse at the desk. I think she might be a distant cousin of mine who went missing. She has a history of mental illness. ID number? The nurse asked, not looking up. 29904. The nurse tapped on her keyboard. Jane Doe, brought in by patrol 3 weeks ago, found screaming in an alley in Capitol Hill, claimed someone stole her eyes. The nurse looked at me, her expression softening slightly. She's in the secure wing. She's difficult. She refuses to speak to anyone because she thinks we're all imposters. Can I see her? Just for a moment, to confirm.
5 minutes, the nurse said, but don't touch the glass. I walked down the long linoleum corridor. The screams of other patients echoed from behind steel doors, but I tuned them out. I stopped at room 4B. There was a small reinforced observation window. I looked in. The room was padded, white walls, white floor. There was no furniture, just a mattress on the floor. Serafina was sitting in the corner, facing the wall. She was rocking back and forth. Her hair, the platinum blonde she had dyed it, was matted and greasy. She was wearing a gray hospital gown. She looked small. "Sarah," I whispered. The glass was thick, soundproof, but I saw her stiffen. She turned her head. Her eyes were open. They were cloudy, milky white, staring at nothing. The toxin had done its work. The optic nerves had oxidized, leaving the pupils blown and unresponsive. She scrambled up, feeling the wall with her hands. "Who's there?" she screamed. I couldn't hear her voice, but I could read her lips perfectly. "Who is there?" She flails at the air, terrified. "Is it you, Ilara? Are you here?" She spun in a circle, blind and desperate. "I can hear you breathing," she shrieked at the empty room. "Give them back. Give me my eyes. I'll be good. I promise I'll be good." She collapsed onto the mattress, sobbing, clawing at her face. I watched her for a full minute. I looked at the identical curve of her jaw, the identical shape of her ears, the body that I had shared a womb with.
She was in hell, a hell of eternal darkness, trapped with the demons of her own paranoia. She would never see a mirror again. She would never see a man look at her with desire. She would never see the money she stole. She was finally, truly, nothing. I placed my hand on the glass. "Goodbye, sister," I mouthed. I turned and walked away. I left the hospital and stepped out into the Seattle sunshine. It was rare to have a clear day in November. The sky was a piercing, brilliant blue. I walked to my car. I caught my reflection in the side mirror. The black hair, the sharp lipstick, the cold, dark eyes. I didn't look like Ilara anymore. And I certainly didn't look like the broken thing in room 4B. I drove to the waterfront. I sat on a bench watching the ferries cut through the dark water of the Sound. I thought about Kylan. I thought about the boathouse. I thought about the tattoo on my thigh. I had broken the mirror, and in doing so, I had become the thing I feared most. But I was alive. I was free, and I was the only one. My phone buzzed. A text from work. "Mira, the data from the new trial looks promising. We need you to lead the presentation next week." I typed back, "I'll be there." I put the phone away. I took a deep breath of the salty air. Ilara Vance was dead. Serafina Vance was a ghost haunting a padded cell. I stood up and smoothed my coat. Mira Stone had a meeting to prepare for. 3 months passed in a blur of sterile white labs and accolades. I was promoted to lead project manager at Etheria Gen. My life was a grid of perfectly aligned variables. Work, gym, sleep, repeat. I was untouchable. Or so I thought. On a Tuesday in December, the CEO summoned me to the top floor conference room. The glass walls offered a panoramic view of the Seattle skyline, gray and weeping as always. "Mira," the CEO, a nervous man named Arthur, said as I entered, "I'd like to introduce you to our new majority shareholder. His firm just completed the acquisition of Etheria this morning. He specifically asked to meet the lead on the neuro mapping project." I walked in, confident, my hand extended. Then the chair at the head of the table swiveled around. The breath died in my throat. It was Julian. He looked older. The boyish charm was gone, replaced by a razor-sharp ruthlessness in his eyes. He was wearing a bespoke suit that cost more than my annual salary. He didn't look shocked to see me. He looked expectant. "Hello, Mira," he said, emphasizing the name with a delicate, surgical precision. "I've heard so much about your execution." "Mr. Thorne," I managed to say, keeping my face a mask of professional indifference. My heart, however, was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I wasn't aware Thorne Industries was interested in biotech. "We're interested in anything that alters perception," Julian said, standing up. He was tall, imposing. "Arthur, give us the room." Arthur scrambled out, closing the heavy glass door behind him. We were alone. Julian walked over to the window, looking out at the rain. "You cut your hair," he said casually. "I like it. It makes you look predatory." "What do you want, Julian?" I asked, dropping the pretense. There was no point, he knew. "I want to catch up," he said, turning to face me. "I went to St. Jude's last week." My blood ran cold. "I visited the Jane Doe in the secure wing," he continued, walking slowly toward me around the long table. "The blind woman, the one who screams about stolen eyes. I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't insult me, Alara," he said softly. "I knew Serafina better than anyone. I knew her chaos. I knew her smell. Even covered in hospital filth and smelling of institutional soap, I knew it was her." He stopped 3 feet away from me. "And I knew it wasn't you," he added, "because you are standing right here, wearing a stolen name and working a stolen job." "I tried to kill me," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "She killed Kaylin. She burned the boathouse. I did what I had to do." "I know," Julian said, and then he smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a man who just found a missing puzzle piece. "I pulled the inventory logs for your lab, Alara. A vial of compound N7, neurotoxic, irreversible optic nerve damage, missing on the exact date Serafina was admitted to St. Jude's." He pulled a folder from his briefcase and slid it across the table. "I own this company now," he said, "which means I own the evidence of your theft, and your assault, and your fraud." I assessed the room. The door was glass. There were cameras. I couldn't hurt him here. "Are you going to turn me in?" I asked. "God, no," Julian laughed, pouring himself a glass of water from the carafe on the table. "Why would I do that? Serafina was a liability, a chaotic, embarrassing liability. She cost me money. She cost me reputation. You cleaned up the mess." He took a sip, watching me over the rim of the glass. "I always thought you were the boring twin, the moral one, the weak one. But you broke her. You blinded her and left her in a cage. That is a level of cold-blooded efficiency I didn't think you possessed." "What do you want?" I repeated. "I want a partner," Julian said. He tapped the folder. "Thorne Industries handles delicate problems for wealthy clients. We fix things, but we need someone who understands biology, someone who understands how to disappear people without making them dead, someone who can create, say, a neurotoxin that mimics a stroke, or a compound that induces temporary amnesia." He looked at me with hungry eyes. "You have a talent, Alara. Serafina played at being bad. You are bad, and I have the resources to protect you. I can make the investigation into Kaylin's death disappear permanently. I can ensure Jane Doe never leaves that hospital. And if I refuse, Then I release the inventory logs to the FBI, he shrugged, and I tell them exactly where to find the missing Elara Vance. I stared at him. I realized then that I had misjudged everything. Serafina wasn't the villain. She was just the symptom. Julian was the disease. He hadn't been duped by Serafina all those months. He had likely been enabling her, watching her, maybe even funding her little games until she became too messy. And now he wanted me, not as a wife, as a weapon. I looked at the gray skyline. I looked at the folder. I thought about the mirror tattoo on my thigh, the dagger. I walked over to the table and picked up the folder. I didn't open it. Compound N7 is crude, I said, looking Julian in the eye. It leaves a chemical trace in the spinal fluid for weeks. If you want something undetectable, I'd need access to the level 4 containment lab. Julian's smile widened. It was genuine this time, a predator recognizing another predator. You have full clearance, he said. Welcome to the board, Mira. I shook his hand. His grip was warm, firm, and terrifying. I walked out of the conference room and back to my lab. I sat down at my computer. I had traded one cage for another. Serafina was in a padded room. I was in a glass tower. But as I logged into the level 4 secure server, I felt a familiar cold calm settle over me. Julian thought he owned me. He thought he had trapped me with blackmail. He forgot one thing. I had killed my own sister. I had erased my own name. I had watched a man drown and felt nothing. Julian was powerful, but he was biological. He had veins. He had nerves. He had breath. And I was the lead researcher. I opened a new project file. Project name, Throne. Objective, liquidation. I started typing. The game wasn't over. It had just moved to the executive level, and this time, I wasn't fighting for survival. I was fighting for the crown. Working for Julian was like dancing on the edge of a razor blade. He was meticulous, paranoid, and brilliant. He insulated himself with layers of lawyers, NDAs, and security that rivaled the Pentagon, but his arrogance was a chink in the armor. He believed he owned me because he knew my secret. He treated me like a prized Doberman, lethal but ultimately obedient to the hand that held the leash. For 6 months, I played the part. I synthesized compounds for him, fixers for his clients, a mist that caused temporary vocal paralysis for a whistleblowing CEO, a transdermal patch that induced a 24-hour fugue state for a senator's mistress. I did it efficiently, without question, and deposited the bonuses into an offshore account he set up for Mira Stone. But every night, in the solitude of the level 4 lab, I worked on Project Throne. I didn't want to kill him. Killing him would trigger a dead man's switch. I knew he had files on me, on Serafina, on Kaylin, set to release to the authorities if he died under suspicious circumstances. No, death was too easy. I needed to erase him. I needed to do to him what I had done to myself. I needed to break his mind. The opportunity came in the form of the annual Thorn Industries Gala, a black tie event held at his private estate on Mercer Island. It was the one night a year Julian let his guard down, surrounded by the elite who bought his silence and his solutions. You're coming as my guest, Julian told me a week before the event. Wear something stunning. We're celebrating a record quarter. I wore a dress made of liquid silver silk. It clung to me like a second skin, high-necked and backless. It was armor. I arrived at the estate by boat, the lights of the mansion reflecting on the dark water. It reminded me of the boathouse, and a flicker of old rage warmed my chest. The party was in full swing. Champagne flowed, a string quartet played in the corner, and the air smelled of expensive perfume and corruption. Julian was holding court in the center of the room, looking like a king. I navigated the crowd, clutching my clutch purse tightly. Inside was a small, silver, compact mirror. But it wasn't a mirror. I had spent months engineering a contact toxin, not a poison you drink or inject, a dust, a microscopic crystalline powder that could be transferred by touch. Once it entered the pores, it bonded to the amygdala, the part of the brain that processes fear. It didn't kill you, it didn't paralyze you, it induced a state of permanent waking nightmare. It flooded the brain with cortisol and adrenaline, hallucinating the victim's deepest, most primal terrors on a loop. There was no antidote, because it wasn't a chemical reaction, it was a structural rewiring of the neural pathways. It was madness in a powder. I approached Julian. He smiled when he saw me, excusing himself from a group of Japanese investors. Mira, he murmured, kissing my cheek. You look dangerous. That was the point, I said. Come, he said, taking my elbow. I want to show you the new acquisition in the library, a first edition Dante. Perfect. Isolation. We walked into the library. It was vast, lined with mahogany shelves, smelling of old brandy and liquor. He closed the double doors. You've been doing good work, he said, turning to me. The Forget-Me-Not Tatch was a huge success in D.C. I'm doubling your retainer. I don't want money, Julian, I said, stepping closer. He raised an eyebrow. Oh, what do you want? I want my file, I said. The one you have on Elara Vance. I want it deleted. He laughed. He actually laughed. My dear, that file is my insurance policy. As long as I have it, I have you, and I plan on keeping you for a very long time. He reached out to stroke my arm. You're exactly like Serafina, I whispered. You think people are toys. People are toys, he said, his eyes darkening. Some are just more expensive than others. I reached into my clutch and pulled out the compact. I have a gift for you, I said. He looked at it, amused. A mirror? Open it, I said, holding it out. He took it. His fingers brushed against the metal casing. I had coated the outside of the compact. It's an antique, I lied. French, 18th century. He rubbed his thumb over the engraving. It's beautiful. The absorption time was 10 seconds. I watched his hand. I counted. 1, 2, 3. Julian, I said softly. He looked up. Yes? Look in the mirror. He flipped it open. He looked at his reflection. 7, 8, 9. He blinked. He frowned. He rubbed his eyes. That's strange. The light. It's flickering. It's not the light, I said, taking a step back. My face, he whispered, staring into the small glass circle. My face is melting. The toxin hit. He dropped the compact. It shattered on the hardwood floor. He stumbled back, clutching his head. What is this? What did you give me? Fear. Pure, distilled fear. He screamed. It wasn't a scream of pain. It was a scream of someone seeing the devil. Get away from me, he yelled, backing into a bookshelf. He was staring at the empty air around him. Get them off. The spiders. Oh God, the spiders are under my skin. He began to claw at his face, his nails digging furrows into his expensive tan. Make it stop, he shrieked, falling to his knees. The fire! Everything is on fire! I stood over him. He looked up at me, his eyes wide, pupils dilated to the point where the irises were gone. Alara, he gasped, you're a skeleton. You're death. I'm just a reflection, Julian, I said. The doors burst open. Security guards rushed in, guns drawn. Mr. Thorne! Julian scrambled backward, pointing at the guards. Monsters! They have no faces! Kill them! He grabbed a heavy crystal decanter from the side table and hurled it at the head of security. It shattered against the man's shoulder. Restrain him, the guard yelled. It took 4 of them to hold him down. He was raving, spitting, screaming about demons and fire and eyes in the walls. They dragged him out, sedated but still whimpering. I stood in the library, the shattered mirror at my feet. The board of directors held an emergency meeting the next morning. Julian Thorne had suffered a massive psychotic break induced by stress and undiagnosed schizophrenia. He was deemed unfit to lead. He was committed to a private sanitarium in Switzerland. The file on Alara Vance? It was on his personal server. As the interim director of special projects, I had access to everything. I found the file. I deleted it. Then I wiped the backups. I was clean. 2 weeks later, I walked into the secure wing of St. Jude's. I had authorized a transfer. I walked to room 4B. Serafina was sitting on the bed. She looked thinner, paler. You have a visitor, the orderly said. She turned her head. Her blind eyes searched the room. Who is it? She rasped. It's me, I said. She froze. Mira? Yes. Did you bring it? She asked, her voice trembling. You said, in the letter, you said you could fix my eyes. I had sent her a letter, in Braille. I can, I said. I'm the head of Etheria now. We have resources. Please, she begged, reaching out. I'll do anything. I'll leave. I'll never speak again. Just let me see. I'm moving you, I said, to a private facility in Switzerland. She gasped. Switzerland? The best doctors are there. Yes, I said, and you'll have a roommate. Someone you know. Who? Julian, I said. Her face went slack. Julian? Is he sick too? He sees things that aren't there, I said, and you see nothing at all. I think you two will be perfect together. You can tell him what's real, and he can tell you what he sees. I signaled the orderlies. They moved in to prep her for transport. Wait, she screamed as they lifted her. Will he know me? Will he forgive me? He doesn't know anyone anymore, I said. He lives in a nightmare, and now, so do you. I watched them wheel her out. I walked out of the hospital. I drove to the tattoo parlor, the same one in the East Village. I had flown back just for this. What are we doing today? The artist asked. Cover up, I said. I pulled up my pant leg, the mirror with the dagger. It's a cool piece, he said. Why cover it? I don't need to look at it anymore, I said. I don't need the reminder. What do you want instead? A phoenix, I said, rising from the ash, but make it silver and give it black eyes. He started the gun. The pain was sharp, familiar, and grounding. I closed my eyes. Alara was dead. Serafina was blind. Julian was mad. Kaylin was water. I was Mira Stone. I had money, power, and a clean slate. But as the needle dug into my skin, I smiled. Because deep down, I knew the truth. I wasn't Alara. I wasn't Serafina. I wasn't even Mira. I was the survivor, and the world was finally mine.